Hey, guys, welcome back to my channel. This is a story of what if Naruto trained seriously, after the Sasuke retrieval arc. After Naruto and Sasuke's fight at the Valley of the End, Naruto has an epiphany, and everything he thought about changes. Now during his training trip with Jiraya, the blonde trains like crazy, returning to the village, 2.5 years later, as a new shinobi. One who vows to protect the village even if it costs his life. However, those who knew his usual nature wished he didn't change. Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, it means a lot to me, and check the description for the creator of this great fanfic. Now let's start the story. Hello everyone, I'm back one more time with the next chapter of this story. Now back to the story. Chapter 6. Elemental Training. Naruto and Jiraiya were walking on a plain field as the sun was just about to set. The first year was already at its end and Naruto managed to finish his genjutsu training to at least acceptable levels. Clearly, he wasn't cut out for the art of illusions, but at least he would be able to escape from almost any technique that someone casted on him. After the genjutsu part, Naruto focused his entire team on physical exercises in order to build some muscles and stamina. Both his muscles and height grew and now Naruto was almost reaching Jiraiya's neck. The pervert was surprised by Naruto's sudden growth, but then he suspected it had something to do with not eating so much ramen all the time, instead eating healthy food. Another part of Naruto's training revolved towards learning the katas of Sarutobi's clan style. Naruto received a present from Jiraiya, a unique staff, made with heavy metal for bigger impact. The weapon was black with silver at each end. At first, Naruto appeared to be swinging the weapon like a drunk civilian, but with practice, Jiraiya could very well see that Naruto managed to use the weapon as if it was an extension of his body. The style consisted of using the staff together with body movements that would improve the weapon's speed and more deadly, and Naruto was well in his way to learn one of the Sandaime Hokage's many legacies. Also, the staff was special since Naruto could use chakra to diminish its size and keep it like a sword strapped on his back. Because of this, he could very well surprise the enemy by using chakra to elongate the weapon. Right now, the pervert was massaging his bruised left cheek and Naruto could only sigh in dismay seeing that his sensei would never learn his lesson. Every time they would walk inside a village, they had to leave not because of danger that Akatsuki would find them, but rather escaping from the women's wrath after spotting the pervert peeping on them. Oi Naruto, let's settle for today, it's already night and it's not wise to travel in the dark, said Jiraiya, earning a snort from Naruto, who knew that he just wanted to stop to put some ice on the wound so that it would stop hurting. Okay Ero-sensei, but at least admit that your abilities in peeping greatly diminished these days. Almost every village we've been to, you were discovered and we had to run away, laughed Naruto, before receiving a punch in the head from Jiraiya. Oh, what was that for, Ero-sensei? Asked Naruto, though he was smiling inside from being able to irritate his teacher. That's for making fun of the abilities of the almighty Gamma Sennin, brat. Now, let's fix up the tent and gather some wood, said Jiraiya, before smiling upon seeing Naruto mumbling some curse words to the Sannin, while looking for some wood to ignite a fireplace. After everything was set, Jiraiya used a small Kaden jutsu and lit up the fire. Ero-sensei, how long before we meet that friend of yours, what is his name again? Asked Naruto as he was lying down on the ground while looking at the stars. It somehow eased Naruto to look at the sky at night. He would be lost in trying to look at the constellations that Jiraiya once taught him, but it was relaxing nonetheless. Jiraiya smiled at his prodigy pupil. In the beginning of this journey, Jiraiya sometimes confused Naruto with Namikaze Minato, simply because of the drive both had towards training and improving their abilities. However, with time, Jiraiya managed to separate their personalities simply because Naruto was more of a prankster than Minato, often playing jokes with the Sannin, a trait that Naruto's mother had. His name is Makoto Sojiro and he lives in a village close to the desert that separates Fire Country from Wind Country. In actuality, he is now a retired shinobi, but the man was responsible for great deeds for Suna in his prime. Some say that his Fuden skills rivaled none and even say that he could have become Kazekage if he so pleased. He'll be more than adequate to teach you the art of wind ninjutsu, explained Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto as he flipped a dango stick in his mouth. I wonder, though, if I will be able to use the element effectively. I've read a book that said that Fudan ninjutsu was hard to learn and even harder to master in order to be used in battle effectively. Wondered Naruto, but Jiraiya only smiled before explaining to Naruto. Indeed, wind users were rare in this world because of those reasons. However, for those who manages to learn the element, that information alone sends an opponent on edge. Wind is the most feared element in all the elemental nations, Naruto. It serves both as close and middle range, and anyone who dares to face a wind user will most certainly lose. The only weakness, though, is long range, but you don't have to worry about it. Long range users are easy to beat, once you know the most important thing, explained Jiraiya, before Naruto turned his attention to Jiraiya. Those who can only attack from a distance are rendered useless when the opponent learns how to get closer, meaning that once you eliminate the distance between you and a long-range fighter, he's done for and have to adapt his fighting skills, said Jiraiya, earning a nod in acceptance from Naruto. As times passed, student and sensei continue to talk about the difference between close and long-range fighting and how to use the opponent's strength against him. It didn't take long for them to say goodnight to each other as Naruto stayed on guard until Jiraiya would relieve him in 4 hours. The next day, after erasing all evidence of their presence, Jiraiya and Naruto moved towards the place where they would be for at least a couple of months. Naruto didn't know, but Jiraiya did already converse with Sojiro regarding the blonde's training in Fudan ninjutsu. Sojiro showed interest in training the boy at the time, since he knew from Jiraiya that the boy was strong-willed enough to learn everything about wind ninjutsu. After a couple hours walking, the desert appeared in the horizon, meaning that the two were near from their destination. However, Naruto was confused upon seeing that Jiraiya stopped and was looking for something. "Ero-sensei, what are you doing?" asked Naruto, but Jiraiya offered no response, instead just smiled before beginning an intricate set of seals. The seal sequence took longer than Naruto thought, and suddenly Jiraiya slammed his hands on the ground with force. The result stunned Naruto as the image shifted from a plain field to a 2-story house with a considerable garden. After seeing it, Naruto did the only thing he could at the moment. He let his chin fall and the mouth open at the possibility of such a thing. Making a house disappear using chakra was something out of this world, Naruto thought. Jiraiya for his part laughed hard at Naruto's fish face and explained about the art of seals and its uses. He stopped short, though, when he heard a voice echoing in the shadows. "It's been a long time, Jiraiya-san. I've received your messenger hawk," said the voice, but Naruto couldn't find the person's location, since the voice was simply all around. Suddenly, an old but imposing figure appeared holding a simple wooden staff. Gray hair just like Jiraiya, but short. Sojiro was just as big as the Sannin, Naruto wondered. "It's good to see you too, Sojiro-san. I see that time has been kind to you, my friend," smiled Jiraiya, earning a snort from Sojiro. It was common fact, at least for Jiraiya, that just like Orochimaru, Sojiro didn't appreciate the consequences of getting old. "I wouldn't go to the same trouble as Orochimaru to cheat death, but I can't help but agree with him that getting old is such a drag," said Sojiro, earning laughter from Jiraiya. While the elders were talking and remembering the good old days, Naruto was left standing next to Jiraiya as he sees the man upside down. Normally, the blonde would conclude by saying that he didn't look like much, but that would be his old self thinking. Naruto had enough experience as a shinobi now to never interpret what it looks like, instead of seeing the underneath. It actually took a little while for them to stop the conversation, but instead of greeting Naruto, Sojiro just turned his back to them and signaled them to follow him. After a couple of steps, Sojiro turned and began a sequence of hand seals, which Naruto wondered about the similarity with Jiraiya's sequence from before. Afterwards, he slammed both hands on the ground and the landscape suddenly shifted, until Naruto couldn't see either the desert or the path behind. Jiraiya looked at his student with a smile on his face. Sojiro happens to be extremely cautious, even after retirement, it seems. With Fuinjutsu, he can hide his house so that no one can see where it is. Also, as you can see, this house doesn't belong to the usual terrain, meaning we just jumped to another dimension where the house is located, explained Jiraiya, before waiting to see Naruto screaming like crazy at the implications of what was said. "What? How the hell are we in another dimension?" shouted Naruto, before Sojiro began to speak on Jiraiya's behalf. "Jiraiya-san said you're loud, but I thought he was joking." "Well, To answer your question, it would require explaining quite a lot of theory regarding Fuinjutsu, and with the amount of experience you have now, it would be impossible for me to explain it to you and also impossible for you to fully understand. The reason why I brought you here is twofold. First, you have powerful enemies that are tracking you as we speak, and second, it will benefit your training in Fuden Ninjutsu. Now, come inside and we'll get to talk about how we will spend the next 4 months, said Sojiro as he turned once again to the house and stepped forward with Naruto and Jiraiya close behind. Once inside, all three of them went to a room that had a huge library of scrolls and a table in the middle for studies. Sojiro took one of the chairs and ushered his guests to do the same as he grabbed a strange object. To Naruto, it looked like simple disc shape made of glass, but for the most experienced, this was a special piece of glass. Naruto, I happen to know from Jiraiya that you possess a wind affinity. However, while it's rare in your country, it isn't in wind country. As a matter of speaking, our studies with wind jutsus have been carried out since the Shidaime Kazekage's era many years ago. I'll be explaining everything I know about the art, but first we need to know how strong is your affinity towards wind jutsus, said Sojiro, this time earning looks of surprise by Jiraiya, not only Naruto. Sojiro was expecting this, so he smiled and proceeded to explain. This object, as you know Jiraiya, is what Suna uses to find their ninja's affinities. However, for those who possesses affinity for wind, we also have a specific object that indicated how strong is said affinity, explained Sojiro, earning a nod from Jiraiya and Naruto, before the man continued to explain. The method is quite simple. Naruto only needs to focus chakra on the disc and it will be cut multiple times. The key to knowing how strong is his affinity is the numbers of cuts on the disc. Try Naruto, let's see how strong is your affinity, said Sojiro as he handed the disc to Naruto. Naruto, then, extended his hand and placed the disc on top of it, before he began to focus his chakra. Quickly, Naruto focused the necessary chakra and was surprised to see that the disc was being sliced many times. 5, 15, 20, 25 cuts total. Naruto was confused, since he didn't know if that was good or bad. Also, the look of surprise that Sojiro expressed on his face didn't tell much. Naruto could possess the strongest affinity yet or the worst. The man, though, cleared his throat and looked at Naruto while smiling. That's an odd number for someone with your experience. Most Junin in Suna could only cut 15 times and they were already trained in the art. Jiraiya, are you sure he's from Konoha? Asked Sojiro, before seeing a nod from the pervert, before he continued. Well, then, it seems you'll be able to grasp pretty much everything that is to be taught regarding Fuden Ninjutsu. Now, your training will begin tomorrow, since I have yet to prepare the material necessary. So, I'll be showing you to your respective rooms and prepare some dinner for us, said Sojiro, before rising from his chair and leaving the room, followed closely by Naruto and Jiraiya. After Sojiro guided Naruto to his room, he went with Jiraiya to his room, but not without taking the opportunity to talk to the pervert. Jiraiya knew that Naruto's numbers were above average and he also knew that Sojiro was beyond impressed. The man was smart, Jiraiya knew. Now that Naruto is not here, I'd like to express my surprise concerning the results, said Sojiro, earning a nod from Jiraiya who smiled as he was listening to his friend. While I said that Junin are only able to cut 15 times, I didn't say that he surpassed the Nidaime Kazekage, who until now detained the record for most cuts. Who is he, Jiraiya? How is this possible? Asked Sojiro, but Jiraiya was too stunned to even answer. Naruto having more potential than a cage-level ninja was surprising enough, but surpassing the Nidaime Kazekage, who was known as Suna's Kase Tenshu Wind God, was beyond anything he ever thought possible. I'm just as stunned as you are, actually. Naruto indeed held great promise in the future, but I never thought he could surpass a Kage in elemental manipulation, at least not for a good 10 years. And thinking about it, this number can increase after he masters the element, am I right? Asked Jiraiya, earning a nod from Sojiro who couldn't help but smile upon finding such a prodigy to pass his teachings to. I want to know more about him, Jiraiya. Tell me all his abilities so far and his accomplishments, said Sojiro, earning a nod from Jiraiya, who then invited Sojiro for a cup of tea for their upcoming conversation. After Sojiro made up some tea, Jiraiya began to tell everything about Naruto. He told about the boy's skills up to now, involving, of course, his uncanny ability to learn things faster with the Kage Bunshin technique. He told about Naruto's first C-ranked mission, where he along with his team faced an A-ranked missing nin from Mist, to which Sojiro was surprised to hear that was the time that Naruto learned the true power of the Kyuubi no Yoko. He also came to hear about the time of the Suna sound invasion, that Naruto managed to save Konoha by beating Shukaku the one-tailed Jinchuriki. That was the only time I thanked the heavens that I was already retired, unless I would be dragged to this mess. At the time, Orochimaru lured Suna to attack Konoha, taking advantage that the Wind Daimyo was choosing Konoha for his missions. So, Naruto managed to beat the Yondaime Kazekage's son while possessed by Shikaku. What else? Smiled Sojiro, since he envisioned the next 4 months and the times Naruto will surpass every expectations set before him. There are many more accomplishments to tell you about. His team was responsible for freeing Snow Country and Takigakure from being taken by missing nins once. I assure you, Sojiro, the brat will surprise you a lot. He may not get it right away, but after practice, he will learn it faster than anybody else. The people in Konoha has much faith in his abilities in the future to come, said Jiraiya, to which Sojiro nodded, before saying that he now needed to prepare Naruto's training for the upcoming 4 months. Jiraiya nodded and went back to his room to take a quick nap. Due to escaping from Akatsuki's clutches, Jiraiya and Naruto weren't able to stay much time resting, being on constant move. Now that they would be safe for the upcoming 4 months, he could finally rest. Later, when dinner was ready, Naruto and Sojiro began to talk about some light subjects. Naruto learned that Sojiro wasn't very fond of talking shinobi while eating, so he kept the million questions he had in his mind to himself at least until tomorrow. Naruto confessed to both Jiraiya and Sojiro that he never thought about having a hobby, since all he did during his life was to train and eat ramen. However, Naruto couldn't help but be amazed at some different subjects that Jiraiya and Sojiro were discussing about. Their subjects began from a few jokes about the past to intellectual discussions about both the Fire and Wind Daimyo's lives and their respective decisions concerning specific topics. Eventually, the conversation was over and all of them went to their respective rooms to sleep. Naruto, though, could admit that he didn't understand half the words that were being discussed. Nevertheless, he felt it kind of relieved of getting to relax from the ninja training, and it was a weird sensation for the blonde. Thinking about other subjects apart from shinobi related, was a strange concept for Naruto, and suddenly the word Hokage appeared in his mind. As he turned on the water for a quick shower, Naruto was trying to associate the daimyo figure of a big country like Konoha with the Hokage. Certainly, one being the ruler of the country and the other being the ruler of a hidden village. However, if the daimyo rules the whole country, then the daimyo rules Konoha as well. All these thoughts were in Naruto's head at the moment, and he couldn't figure the answer to these questions. Getting out of the shower, he got in some light sleeping clothes, not that horrible pajamas that he wore in the series, and went to a very comfortable bed. Introduction to politics was something the Ninja Academy actually covered, but Naruto never really paid much attention to the subject, even if the teacher, at the time, wouldn't explain it in terms he could understand. For Naruto, everything not connected to the shinobi way of life didn't pique his interest much. However, now the doubt about who has more authority in Konoha did plague his mind a bit. Naruto knew that Konoha provided services for Fire Country, since the Fire Daimyo would request a vast majority of missions to be held by the village. But, could the Hokage say no to the daimyo without consequences? The blonde was getting impatient with not knowing the answers to these questions, so he instead closed his eyes and tried not to think about it so much. The next day, rising up early, Naruto was already at the kitchen making some breakfast when Jiraiya showed up, yawning from the nice sleep he had in ages. "It seems you're eager to begin training as always, Naruto," smiled Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto, who settled a glass of orange juice to the pervert, who in turn accepted eagerly. "Ero-sensei, I was remembering your discussion with Sojiro-sensei yesterday about politics, and I was wondering about something," said Naruto, earning Jiraiya's attention. At first, Jiraiya thought he was still sleeping as he blinked a couple of times in front of the blonde. It wasn't just because of the subject, it was just because Naruto expressed interest in something else besides training as a shinobi. He issued Naruto to come forward with his doubt. "Well, I was thinking about the daimyo and the Hokage position. I know that the Hokage is the ruler of the hidden village, but since the village is located within fire territory, then the Hokage answers to the daimyo, correct? Asked Naruto, to which Jiraiya nodded, before the blonde continued. My question is, can the Hokage choose to not to respond or would have to abide by the daimyo's wishes? Asked Naruto, before seeing Jiraiya smile. You're correct. Indeed, the Hokage must answer to the daimyo, however the daimyo has no saying in how the Hokage rules Konoha. Although, this doesn't mean that the Hokage is completely independent from the daimyo. You don't know this, but the daimyo has access to all of Konoha's legal documentation and shinobi records. Also, there are certain decisions that a Hokage alone can't choose, like the cage position itself. When a Hokage steps down, it's up to the daimyo to choose a worthy candidate for the position, who, then, will be submitted to the village's Junin Council for the final decision. Explained Jiraiya, before seeing Naruto crack his brain for a while, before smiling in understanding. I didn't know you'd be interested in politics, Naruto, said Jiraiya. Well, it's not that it perked my interest, it was just a doubt of my own. I think all this information was covered at the academy, I just didn't pay attention that much, thanks for explaining it to me, Ero-sensei, smiled Naruto, earning a nod from Jiraiya, before he heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Ah, I see you two are already up. Good. I actually thought I would have to wake you all up using some methods of my own, but that won't be necessary. Now Naruto, after we finish breakfast, I'll explain to you our schedule for your training. During your stay here, you'll learn everything there is to know about wind manipulation, and when I say everything, I mean it just that. I have with me over 50 years of study in the art, gathered in one major scroll which will be your friend for the duration of your stay here. This will involve not only practical exercises, but mental as well, since learning to control the wind requires knowledge and above all, patience, said Sojiro, before grabbing a glass to fill it with orange juice as well as some cereal in the fridge. Naruto for his part managed to see how enthusiastic Sojiro was and couldn't help but smile in retrospect to what the man said about his training. Once Sojiro finished his breakfast, he got up and ushered both Naruto and Jiraiya to follow him outside when they would be commence. They walked for a while, until Sojiro stopped and turned to set his gaze on his new student. Now, this will be your training ground for the duration of your training, said Sojiro as he motioned the youngster to look around a bit. The scenario was interesting, Naruto wondered. Lots and lots of trees filled the area, but somehow it was different than an actual forest and a small lake with a waterfall to his left. Naruto couldn't help but marvel at the beautiful scenery set before him. The water falling in contrast with the sunlight was an astonishing sight to behold. After some time wandering his eyes around, Naruto smiled and fixed eye contact with his new sensei. You have a nice home, Sojiro-sensei. I could just stare at the waterfall for months on end, smiled Naruto, earning a nod from Sojiro, followed by a smile as he turned to understand what Naruto sees in it. I suppose so, I've been living here for 15 years now, but it's a sight to behold, indeed. Now, I'll explain you what we'll be doing, and as I said before, I'll teach you everything I know. As you know or do not know, Fudan ninjutsu is, to me, the deadliest element in ninjutsu. Although it's chakra-consuming, a wind user is feared throughout the elemental nations, simply because you can use it in close, mid and long-range fighting. No affinity covers as much as wind. Now, Fudan divides itself in 3 subcategories, and you'll learn them all. First one of them is the wind itself. By using chakra, you can focus on increasing the power of the wind, assemble hurricanes and even creating strong gusts of wind capable of tearing out trees from the ground with a simple blow. The second one is the wind slice ability. This type of power is most used with swords as it elongates the metal and also strengthens them to fight. Last, but not least, is air pressure control. The last one is the most advanced form of wind manipulation, and sadly to say, I can't teach you much further than the very basic. Up to now, only one jutsu was created by air pressure manipulation, explained Sojiro, before was interrupted by Naruto. Sojiro-sensei, may I ask why the third type is frowned upon? I believe it would be an advantage to control such element, asked Naruto, while crossing his arms, but this time Jiraiya took the liberty to explain. Air pressure manipulation requires too much chakra and too much concentration to be used properly, and in the midst of battle, the enemy wouldn't wait for you to do that. There were those who lost their lives in battle because of using a skill they weren't familiarized with. As I understand, you'll be learning the first and second abilities of Fuden ninjutsu and leave the third one for last, said Jiraya, looking at Sojiro for confirmation. Indeed, he will. First, though, is imperative that you learn how to use Fuden chakra and then we'll progress to a most advanced study of the art. Physical training will be held in daylight and when the sun goes out, we'll head back to read some material about Fuden ninjutsu and its many uses. Any questions? Asked Sojiro, earning a nod from Naruto. Yes, I know that Fuden is an offensive affinity, but can we use wind for defensive purposes? Asked Naruto, to which Sojiro smiled. Just like every affinity, Fuden have both offensive and defensive capabilities. Of course, wind is more suited for offense, but it's also used to defend. I happen to know some techniques that serve for protection. Speaking of techniques, they'll serve as objectives to this training. They are 10 techniques I'll teach you during these 4 months. Of course, there are plenty other techniques, but I choose these for you to learn each one of the wind's capabilities. I'll reveal them as you progress in your training. Your schedule will be divided in 4. The first month will be to teach you how to use Fuden chakra how it's supposed to be. The next 3 months will be to teach you the 3 capabilities of Fuden that we discussed before. How is that? Asked Sojiro with a smile on his face as he could almost feel Naruto's excitement. Now, Jiraiya here told me about how you use the clone technique to practice faster, so we'll take advantage of it and learn the first aspects of Fuden manipulation. You see, that tree over there, pointed Sojiro, before seeing Naruto turn to meet the tree that his sensei was pointing. Sojiro grabbed a lowly leaf from the ground and ushered Naruto to look as he explained. One of the many aspects of Fuden ninjutsu is to slice objects using only chakra, said Sojiro as he focused some chakra in his hand and showed the leaf being sliced in 2 before Naruto's very eye. You are to use as many kage bunshin in each practice this. At the end of the day, I want to see all these leaves sliced in 2, ordered Sojiro, before seeing the blonde make the hand signal for the technique. Instantly, a large group of Narutos appeared before Jiraiya and Sojiro, before each grabbing a leaf to practice, thus leaving the tree without a single leaf. Sojiro was astonished by the number, but when he looked at Jiraiya and saw that the perverted wasn't showing any signs of being surprised, Sojiro just waved it off and watched the clones attempting to slice the leaf. So, how long do you think he'll take? Asked Sojiro, before he heard a small snort from Jiraiya. Hard to say, really, this technique of his reduces time to large amounts. He won't need the whole day, though, that I can assure you, said Jiraiya, though in his mind, he had a conviction that Naruto would need close to an hour or 2 until one of the leaves is sliced. Throughout the training, Jiraiya would actually count how much time Naruto needed to fully grasp a technique, and even if the boy didn't focus so much in ninjutsu techniques, aside from the ones he already knew of course, Jiraiya was positive that with this amount of clones, it wouldn't take long for the blonde to scream the technique's completion with the same enthusiasm that guy shows when he wins a challenge against Kakashi. Speaking of the blonde, there he was in the middle of his doppelgangers focusing on slicing the leaf in 2, however to no avail. Nevertheless, Naruto focused on the prime objective that was leaving this place with a considerable concept of what it means to be a true master of his affinity. The blonde understood the concept behind the kage bunshin method of training, so he knew that the training that he will be subjected to under Sojiro would, in normal circumstances, take years to accomplish. However, now was not the time to think of what didn't happen yet. He knew that eventually he will have to focus in other subjects, but right now his objective was for every one of his clones slice the leaf in 2, which meant that by the time they are done, the real Naruto will accumulate all their experience with this exercise. 2 hours passed and the Narutos kept on going non-stop with the intention of completing the exercise. Sojiro questioned Jiraiya about the boy's chakra capacity and wondered how could he sustain the bunshins and work on the technique as well. The response, although unexpected, didn't surprise Naruto's new sensei. Sojiro already knew that with Naruto, a lot of surprises would come and that he shouldn't wonder the reason behind it anymore. So when Jiraiya said that Naruto already had more chakra than a high elite Junin, Sojiro whistled, but otherwise didn't show any surprise to Jiraiya. However, all those thoughts of not being surprised any longer with the blonde disappeared when he heard the distinguished sound of leaves being sliced and turned to the clones. The sounds of leaves being cut was like a weapon shooting bullets repeatedly without needing to reload. Well, I guess I was right, he didn't need the whole day, you might as well introduce him to the next step of the training, before the sun goes down, advised Jiraiya, still finding amused to see Sojiro's stunned face upon seeing Naruto finishing the exercise in close to 2 hours. He has 1 month to train on the fundaments of wind manipulation. Jiraiya, also we're not in a hurry here, so I don't see a need for him to waste chakra and fail to absorb the theory later tonight, explained Sojiro, before seeing Jiraiya nod in understanding. Suddenly, the clones vanished and Naruto appeared in front of the two elders, with a clearly happy expression on his face, which in turn made Sojiro smile in return. The boy sure has stamina. I guess he could have gone longer today, but for today is all right, he'll have plenty of time to practice. I can see you're happy, Naruto, but I wonder if you'll remain smiling once this training is over. Now, you'll finalize today's training with some physical workout. Jiraiya said that you're practicing with the bow staff, so practice some of the katas and then come back inside, ordered Sojiro, before seeing Naruto nodding with enthusiasm and remove a scroll from his holster in order to summon his new weapon. Immediately, the blonde closed his eyes in order to remember the many katas that were being drilled in his mind from practice as he was twirling the not-so-light staff with both hands. When he opened his eyes, Naruto focused his attention of imaginary opponents coming at him and began the dance. He began by thrusting it forward before grabbing at the end of the staff more maximum reach, before recovering and jumping to land a roundhouse kick at the incoming opponent who tried to attack him with a well-aimed punch to his face. Seeing two other attackers coming from the right, Naruto prepared defensive maneuvers for the imaginary swords that were constantly attacking the blonde in rapid succession. Naruto, then, used the other end of the staff and managed to hit one of the attackers on the shoulder before twirling the staff once more and landing a strike on the man's chin by using the staff to balance himself in the air while he used his foot right on target. The blonde practiced a while longer until fatigue reached him. He entered the house and went for a quick shower before feeling the sudden impulse to list some curse words to his new sensei. Right there on the table, was located a pile of books and scrolls that no doubt were meant for him to read them. Even though the blonde found reason to start reading books on shinobi matters, he wasn't entirely happy upon seeing a pile of books and scrolls to read. Suddenly, Sojiro appeared and smiled at the chance of getting back at him for surprising him a couple of times. Now, Naruto, like I told you before, at night you'll be studying the theory behind wind manipulation. Like all ninja art, beyond training, Fuden ninjutsu requires patience and knowledge, which is why after dinner, you'll be reading these books and scrolls here. The books contain the general theory whereas the scrolls represents the jutsus you will be learning throughout your time here. Do you have any questions? Asked Sojiro. Actually, yes, I was thinking about the leaf training exercise. I remembered reading about 2 necessary exercises to initiate in wind manipulation. What is the next one? Asked Naruto, earning a nod in understanding from Sojiro. The next one will be attempted tomorrow, but I see no ill in explaining to you right now so then you can prepare yourself for the task. You remember the waterfall outside, don't you? Asked Sojiro, before Naruto nodded and he continued. Well, basically, you'll be doing the same thing with the leaves, except now you'll have to cut a waterfall in half, explained Sojiro, only waiting for the same outburst almost everyone makes upon hearing the exercise, which much to his delight, came. How the hell am I going to cut a waterfall? This is ridiculous. How can I slice the water? Asked Naruto, earning yet another nod from Sojiro, but instead of answering right away, he thought of giving a homework assignment for Naruto. That will be your job to figure out for tomorrow. You see, in one of the books, lies the answer you're looking for and it will be your assignment to find the information and explain it to me, assigned Sojiro, before seeing Naruto frown and then went to the kitchen for dinner without even looking at Sojiro's face, earning a slight laugh from the elder shinobi who in turn understood why Jiraiya said it was fun to teach this brat. The next morning, the same ritual happened once more. Breakfast and waiting for his sensei to arrive for the next part of the training. Naruto understood from the books he stayed up all night reading, the secret behind slicing the waterfall. The truth was that Naruto would draw a line using Fuden ninjutsu, cutting the current water from falling entirely, keeping the first half up the line with his chakra. The other half would fall freely, because it isn't being sustained by Naruto's chakra. Suddenly, Naruto heard steps coming from the steps and saw his new sensei. Naruto found it strange that Jiraiya was spending a lot of time in his room resting, but he stopped thinking once Sojiro asked him the question, to which Naruto responded. Indeed, wind chakra can slice everything, even water for a couple of seconds. By using wind chakra, you can slice the water particles, which in the waterfall case, the first half will remain suspended and the bottom half will let gravity run its course. Very good, now the theory is resolved, but we are still short of practicing it to see how you fare against the waterfall. This waterfall happens to have somewhat of a bridge right in front of the falling water, so you won't have problems with finding a spot. Now finish your breakfast and we'll begin right away, said Sojiro, earning a nod from Naruto. A few minutes afterwards, Naruto and Sojiro were standing right in front of the waterfall. The day wasn't sunny like yesterday, in fact it was a bit cloudy with the prospect of rain later on. This exercise is the same principle as the leaf slice exercise, but now you'll amplify the area and cut the entire waterfall. By completing this exercise, you'll fit all the requirements needed for the first techniques I plan to teach you. However, that won't happen until you learn to be proficient in using the standard wind abilities in the midst of a physical exercise. In order to learn wind techniques, you must learn how to use them adequately. Wind techniques require concentration and patience, so you can't do it while you're either not focused on the fight or in the middle of defending from an attack. Now, use the bridge there and create as many kage bunshin you feel necessary to be able to slice the waterfall in half, said Sojiro, before turning his back on Naruto and proceeded to walk back home. Naruto remained watching his sensei and actually wondered why the man wouldn't be around to see his progress on the exercise. From what he read, the waterfall exercise takes a long time to complete. Doesn't matter, though, Naruto thought. Like all obstacles set before me in the past, I'll overcome this as well. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, thought Naruto as the clones immediately vanished and appeared on top of the waterfall, before extending both hands and begin the exercise. With Jiraya dressing in only a light blue kimono, Jiraya was sure taking his time to rest and enjoy the time in Sojiro's home. He knew that the man would be taking care of Naruto's training, so he could rest all the time he wanted without worrying about Naruto being alone to train. Thinking of the blonde since they left Konoha really brought a smile on his face. Never before he saw such enthusiasm and drive to improve from someone, and Jiraiya was sure that Naruto would return to the village quite strong. He would even be amused upon wondering a fight between Kakashi and Naruto by the time he returned from the journey. Jiraiya was looking outside from the window only to see that it had started raining when suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. When he turned, though, he was confused to see only Sojiro standing there, before he kneeled on the ground and fixed some sake for him as well. "Where is Naruto?" asked Jiraiya, displaying a serious face like he knew what the man did. "He is training at the waterfall. Don't worry about the boy, Jiraiya. He is old enough to learn that sometimes, you have to improve on your own. He can't depend on others to train his whole life," said Sojiro as he drank all the sake left in the cup, before pouring out some more. Jiraiya, however, snorted at the man from insinuating that Jiraiya lifted a finger to aid in Naruto's training. "You're wrong, Sojiro, if you think I helped him train. If much, I taught him 2 jutsus and how to counter genjutsu. The rest it was all him. He was the one who perfected the Rasengan with one hand and learned to amplify it. He managed to learn on his own 3 very useful attack jutsus and even mastered a taijutsu style on his own. The bow staff katas, he learned by reading the scroll containing the movements. You don't need to worry about him learning how to improve his abilities on his own, he knows that already," explained Jiraiya as he got up and left Sojiro, who in turn smiled and looked outside at the rain. Jiraiya grabbed an umbrella and went outside to see his prodigy. The Sannin didn't know how long Naruto was trying the exercise, but he damn well know Naruto wouldn't be able to do it right away, no matter how much he improved his skills. Truth to his wonders, upon arriving, he saw Naruto and his clones attempting to slice the whole waterfall. Instead, all each Naruto could do was throw water to each respective faces, not managing much. The boy was persistent, though, and wouldn't give up so soon. Also, there was something in this drive of his that amazed Jiraiya. Even though there were quite some distance between the two, Jiraiya could very well see the look of pure concentration that Naruto displayed upon attempting the exercise. "You can do this, Naruto. Slice this waterfall in half and you'll proceed in this training," thought Jiraiya as he stood there while resting the umbrella on his shoulders. 5 hours later, after a minor rest followed by a soldier pill, Naruto continued once again. His clones were halfway there and the waterfall was already showing signs of being sliced any minute now. This was the time that Sojiro appeared next to Jiraya. The rain already stopped and the blonde could now focus more on the task at hand. How much time do you think he will take to complete? Asked Sojiro, before seeing Jiraya smile. Just about now, I'm afraid. The waterfall is already on the verge of slicing. The next one will do it, said Jiraya. Suddenly, his guess turned out to be right as the noise of the waterfall slicing in half with wind chakra echoed through the clearing. After the clones dissipated, Naruto remained looking at the waterfall, as in looking at his accomplishment in Fuden ninjutsu. When he turned, he saw both Sojiro and Jiraya looking at him from the ground, so he used a shunshin and appeared right in front of the elders. Congrats Naruto, in only 2 days, you managed to complete the 2 steps necessary to begin the real training. Now, I can see that you're exhausted, so let's back home to take a shower and then I'll show the jutsus you'll be learning from me, said Sojiro, earning a nod from Naruto, who then looked at Jiraya, who in turn was smiling in acknowledgement. Naruto didn't need to ask, because he knew that look on Jiraya's face and he only showed once Naruto managed to complete an exercise. Later at night, after a nice shower and an amazing dinner, in Naruto's mind, the blonde and Sojiro were now reading one big scroll that contained all the techniques Naruto would learn in 3 months. Although he wouldn't practice it for a considerable time, Sojiro advised Naruto to understand each technique's theory before attempting to perform them. The list of jutsus covered all 3 forms of wind manipulations and the scroll contained wide details of the techniques, informing the hand seals, chakra capacity necessary, jutsu level and, of course, how to perform. Naruto saw the jutsu titles and couldn't contain his smile to go from ear to ear. Fuden Daitapa Wind Release. Great Breakthrough Jutsu Fuden Suido no Tatsumaki Wind Release. Tornado Tunnel Jutsu. Fuden K's no Tate Wind Release. Wind Shield Jutsu Fuden Repusho Wind Release. Gale Wind Palm Jutsu Fuden K's no Yaba Wind Release. Wind Sword Jutsu. Fuden Kazakiri Wind Release. Wind Cutter Jutsu Fuden Saraisu no Tatsumaki Wind Release. Slicing Tornado Jutsu Fuden Kaden Shuriken Wind Release. Rotating Shuriken Jutsu. Fuden Juyusegan Wind Release. Gravity Force Jutsu Fuden Atsugai Wind Release. Pressure Damage Jutsu. Immediately, Naruto proceeded to read the first technique with confidence that he would learn everything that he needed to, in order to master all these techniques in 3 months. Okay, that's enough for this chapter. I first intended to cover all of Naruto's wind training in this chapter, but in the end I thought against it. Next chapter will show the end of the 4 months and Naruto fighting against Sojiro while using the techniques he will learn along with his weapon of choice. Also, a major event will occur next chapter and I can say for sure that all the listeners know what it is. I won't ruin the surprise so soon, though. I'll leave it to your imagination. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like for more what ifs and support the author. See you guys in the next video.